Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our in conversation session this afternoon. Um, it's a chilly afternoon here in Johannesburg, and I hope wherever you guys are signing in from, it's much warmer, where you guys are at. So, I'm Bradley Cody, and I'm one of the program managers at Property Point. And this afternoon, we're going to be hosting a very exciting and an innovative entrepreneur whose name is Arjun Khoosal, who's the CTO and co-founder a founder of Kendua. We're currently live on YouTube.
Sorry, I'm actually a co-founder. There's another
Oh,
guy. Yeah.
okay, cool. At least I've got that right. So we're also currently live on YouTube at the moment at Entrepreneurship to the Point. You can also sign up for our newsletter. If you log on to www.ettp.co.za, you'll get all the information in relation to all the events and live streams that we have hosted previously and that we're going to be hosting into the future. I'd like to give Arjun Khoosal a chance to introduce himself and tell us a bit of his story, on his entrepreneurship journey. Arjun, over to you, man.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that intro. And yeah, very, very excited to have a chat with you and take you through my story. Always enjoy telling it. So, I guess it begins. A good point to begin is like I grew up in a small town called Asia, and I was programming at a pretty young age. I always enjoyed it. I was pretty good at it. I actually did the best in the country at IT and matric. And then was confused about what to study at university. Had a bursary to study actuarial science, which I did together with computer science. And then I was always the archetypal kind of lazy student. So, often people make out entrepreneurs to be these A-type individuals. I was pretty lazy. I was pretty unengaged. I was not that interested in school, university. I did pretty well. And I changed degrees several times because I was kind of looking for something that I was always looking for something that I knew I hadn't yet found. So I changed to a major in math, stats, and computer science. And then I eventually got into this field called computational biology, which to me was kind of interesting. It sounded like a great place to apply myself because it was using the skills that I have, which are like computational number, maths type skills, and applying them to saving lives, basically, through genetics and stuff like that. So I did my honors in it and was doing my master's in it. And I guess that's where the story of Kendua intersects with my own story. And so, I enjoyed my time at university quite a bit. I had amazing supervisors, and the research I was doing, I guess, by objective standards was quite useful and good. It's now been cited over 1,000 times, which is very cool. I'm very stoked about that. But at the time, it just didn't feel, it also just didn't feel like my thing. Perhaps, it's, I have a lot of respect for the people who do it, but it's not for everyone. And I kind of I didn't really know it at the time, but what I was yearning for was that kind of visceral feeling of having an impact that you can feel, and that really, it sounds cliched, but that's kind of the yearning, is change the world, right? And although like all these professions do change the world, I think the rest of the story that I'm about to tell you, to me, just feels more visceral. So, anyways,
I like some of the things you've mentioned. A Property Point, one of the most important things is capturing the stories of our entrepreneurs. And some of the times, with my background especially, growing up, and parents always want you to get that qualification, and follow
For
the
sure.
the
Oh man,
orthodox the
I
orthodox
know exactly
you
what you're
know
talking
the orthodox way, and how
about.
how life should be carried out. But sometimes there's many things that shift your path along the way. And I
Mm,
mean, I've faced that, so growing up in KZN, and moving here to Johannesburg in 2014, and I found that what I thought that I would be doing is totally different to what I'm doing now. And I think sometimes, when you truly, and I know, looking at the material that you have out there, innovation is very key for you. When I've been searching, it's always stuff that's innovative,
mm,
and you're always speaking about innovation, and,
yeah.
and how are you changing things, being solutions focused.
Mm,
And I think as you go along that path, and as you discover your passion, you begin to find these solutions.
mm,
Sometimes people think that innovation is creating an application, but not so much, anymore.
mm,
It's how do you also, besides developing new technologies and new ideas and new ways of thinking, it's also about
mm.
how do you tweak things that are currently there and make them work
Yeah,
better.
sure.
You know,
Yeah.
when did you discover your passion? And and and,
Yeah,
and,
I mean
and
that's
maybe
the
what maybe
that
tell me, at what was there a specific moment, or was it over a period of
yeah, I
time?
mean that's such a
When
good
did you
that,
discover that?
that that's such a great question. And I actually think that um discovering your passion is, I think, the most constructive thing you can do, especially like as a younger person, but as anyone, if you want to really have build a company that matters. That's really where it all starts, right? You have to discover, and discovery, I guess, isn't, people, it's on one hand, you can write down on a list of paper a bunch of ideas and try and do them. But I think often the way people, I think the way really good discoveries are made by people who can really make a difference when they
Mm,
discover those things, is by really finding out what your interests are and following them, right? So I guess throughout my meandering career, I mean, my not career, my university path or whatever, I changed degrees about 3 times. I was just, I every time I did something, I was like, I like this, I don't like that, I'm going to do more of that, And yeah, my parents, for example, were quite devastated when I didn't want to be an actuary, because that would be a great thing to say at weddings to all the other, old
I,
people.
I know,
So
I
yeah,
know all
and
about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I always knew I loved programming, right? And then I discovered my passion basically. So we started out having this conversation that, hey, we want to use technology to help people's lives in some vague way, right? And it started out vague, and it is very much a discovery. It's not like an epiphany; it's a gradual process of discovery, and your whole life kind of leads up to it, I guess. But anyway, so we were having these conversations about how can we use technology to really make a meaningful difference on Maslow's hierarchy. So there's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we all have these needs. And near the top is actualization. So we were like, it would be really awesome if we could use technology to somehow give people professional dignity in some way. Because I think in a country where a lot of violence has been done to dignity. A lot of
I love
people
that
are
thinking.
born feeling like
100%. Yeah.
they don't have as much dignity as they ought to,
Mhm.
and by using like the professional means, like by having a good CV or a good LinkedIn profile or achieving things, you demand that dignity, and that's a great way of bootstrapping dignity. So we were like, okay, how could we do that? And we tossed around a few ideas, anyways. And yeah, already at this point, even just talking about things and thinking about things, I found myself much more interested than I had been in my research that I was doing, in anything that I'd really done before. I was when I take a shower, I'd think about that in the shower, not my masters, not other stuff. And I knew, I swear, I didn't know for sure, but I had a very strong suspicion that, okay, I think I might have found the thing that resonates with me. And then when I was on holiday at my parents' place during my masters,
Mm.
there was a building job that was happening there, and like a bit of a renovation. And yeah, actually quite a big renovation. And the first guy who was working there completely botched it up. Tiles were falling off the walls, things were skewed. And then there was another guy who came, who my parents managed to find, who was super amazing. He completely rescued the operation, was such a nice guy. I kind of got chatting to him and stuff. Yeah, such a nice guy. Like he didn't have a formal education, so he basically his grandfather was a builder and his dad was a builder. And, it's been like a lineage of builders, and I guess something that's how you learn these types of things. And great guy, but he would he didn't have an email address, so didn't know what that was, or knew what it was but didn't have one.
Mr. Khoosal, I just want to stop you. I'm not sure this. I think there's something. Your sound is breaking a little bit.
Sorry. I think I put my hand on the. Is that better?
Yes, much better. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. Can I just continue?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, sure. So great guy. But he didn't have an email address. When he was when he would give quotes to my parents, he would scroll them on a piece of paper, add up the numbers wrong, and just really do such a disservice and to his awesome skills. Like, he was so good at what he did, but he wasn't as effective as he could be with just some small changes,
And so that was like, I just want to jump in there. I just want to jump in there as you mentioned that, because it reminded me of something. I was speaking to your colleague Graham about 3 days ago, and especially, and we'll jump into the question or conversation about COVID, but especially in this time, like not having email address, not having presence, digital presence. Because someone once told me a joke and they said, if you had to kill someone, where would you hide the body, or the safest place to hide the body? And someone said it's the second page of Google. So, you need to be found, because in today's, especially with COVID and the pandemic, if you're not visible digitally, it's like you don't exist. Am I right in that statement?
Yeah, I think for sure. Everything has moved online. Even things which are quite physical, they are also moving online. So for sure, I think that's even more of a like a pressing need in modern times. So I'll be keen to talk more about how we've gone on to solve that. Let me just tell you a bit how let me finish my story. But so so, and then we noticed this, right? We noticed this guy really not making the most out of his skills. And we were like, this is the thing we can apply it to. So before that, we were thinking of gardeners and domestic workers and all manner of different. And then we were like, this is the market. This is the sort of spot that we could have the most impact in. And so that's basically where we started it. And I dropped out of my master's because I was so into it. My co-founder quit his job. We having read some stories and watched some movies, we thought we were gonna get a huge check and nice offices.
High risk, high reward, eh?
Yeah. So we had high hopes, and we went at it, and we found it took much longer to get funding, and things don't just happen. You have to really force it, and you make a few starts, and things don't work out. Like the first thing we made, literally not a single person ever used. So that's how irrelevant it was. And it was, and that's all part of it, right? Putting something out, seeing what happens to it, and then adjusting it, coming back with something better. And once you kind of accept that is the process, and then you start to really enjoy it. And so it was funny. So I got my best friend in Cape Town, and I told him, listen, I know you had other plans. You wanted to go teach English in Russia or something. I was like, listen, you got to come with. We're going to start this thing. It's going to be huge. And then I got to Joburg because I was in Cape Town, and I told my parents, listen, can this guy stay with us for just a month while we get funding? And he ended up staying with my parents and me at my parents' house for a year. So that was
You've adopted him. You've adopted your mate.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, that was kind of our genesis, and that was about 4.5 years ago. So I don't know whether you want me to talk through more of my story.
So and I mean, as we go along, I guess you'll unpack more of it. How did you guys come about the name Kendua? If you mind telling us, what does it mean?
Yeah. So actually, some people know us by our previous names. When we started out, we didn't spend too long thinking about a name because it's not really a productive thing to do when you have nothing to worry about what you're going to call nothing. Rather, make something. So we
Correct.
just came up with the first name we could, literally on Microsoft, like a very simple. We
Mm.
put together a logo, and it was called ID Work at the time. And we had a lot of we spent ages actually discussing whether we should change it and what we should change it to, because people used to always think we were some home affairs company that would get them, I don't know, wouldn't stick and people would
That
mess it up. So
reminds me. That reminds me. I'm not sure if you read the book by Phil Knight. The on the creation of Nike, the brand.
I've heard
Uh,
such great things about it. It's on
and
my
they
list.
and they and they and they they had some crazy names before their I know some
Yeah.
people say Nike, some people say Nike, but they had some crazy names before they actually got to the name Nike. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it reminds me of
Yeah.
that.
So can do
That piece reminds me a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And luckily, my co-founder read it, so I didn't have to. He's the one who reads through the books really quickly and then sends me screenshots of the most
That's cool.
highlights. So anyway, I actually did get some highlights out from that book. But yeah, so the name Kendua came about because of the attitude of all the providers on our platform. It's very can do. So let me just fill the gap in quickly too. I told you what we started, but I didn't really tell you what it became. So we basically became the biggest marketplace for maintenance and renovation in South Africa. And we're now in Joburg. We started off in just Joburg, getting our operations kind of right, tight, because you don't want to scale something that isn't working well. So once we got it to a point where we thought this thing is genuinely appreciated by homeowners, by service providers, and kind of is scalable, we started expanding and going to more services in more areas. And so yeah, basically, a bit like to give you an understanding of what the thing actually is. If you need something done in your home, say a geyser's leaking or something like that, or in a property that you manage or whatever the case, you would log on to Kendua. It's a simple website. No need to download anything, and you type in what you need done, and you'll type in very specifically. The website will ask you what kind of geyser is it, where in the house is it, all these questions, and then
I've seen it. It's quite detailed. It's quite because I've been on the website.
Yeah,
So it's
awesome.
quite detailed.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Yeah, glad you noticed that. But and then we'll use all those details to match you to usually 3 guys who you'll get to compare the quotes and you'll get matched in usually a matter of minutes. So if on completion of the questions, our system very quickly connects you, and in no time your WhatsApp will be buzzing with people trying to get more information of the job and set up a time to come and see it if they need. And in that way, we make it much easier for homeowners to find someone who's vetted, because all the guys who are actually in your inbox, in your WhatsApp messages would have been vetted thoroughly by us. So we have the most reviews in South Africa for this.
That's one thing I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted you to elaborate upon. And speaking to Graham, he also told me about these guys are also you get a pro certified a supplier or a business, and in terms of reputation, and for me, just bringing it personally, if I needed some repairs at home, I would want to know that someone has experience, or see some of their work. I want to know that they can do the job, because you get comfort in those kind of things. Like
for sure. And I think this.
I was telling Graham, I was like, so I've just got a little bulldog puppy, and he's been very destructive at home, and he's been eating the walls and messing about, and I was like, after looking at the platform, and looking at the guys that are certified, and the good reviews and the good stories, I was like, okay, I'm possibly gonna gonna partake in the service, because I can see the reviews. I can see this guy is actually great at what he does. He's got good reviews. He's highly competent, and he can deliver the best service to me. So yeah, it was quite a nice experience going onto your website and seeing all of that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, great that you had the desire to use it for that. That's awesome. Yeah. That's our favorite, when we hear that people were hesitant about doing something in general, even, but then felt comfortable enough, because that's really making the pie bigger, which is awesome. But so all the guys are vetted, and it's, as you say, it's vitally important to make sure that is the case. because your home is your most vulnerable, precious, valued asset, right? Vulnerable place. Your family is there, and it's your most valuable asset. You really can't afford to take chances with your home. And so, yeah, as much as we thought initially, look, we want to.
But that's more on the level of, okay, I'm just speaking about on the residential side, but maybe speak to about maybe some of the good stories that you guys had on, more of the bigger properties and the commercial, possibly industrial side of things, and those kind. Because
Yeah,
I know
sure.
you guys got 11,000, am I right?
Yeah, that's more or less
Members.
correct.
So
Yeah.
that's quite a big number of
Yeah.
businesses you have on your platform.
Yeah, and all of them, we've actually spoken to all of their references, for example, to make sure that they are.
'Cause I know you have a
level
team that verifies that. Am I right? A team
Yeah. So we have a
that
team and we have a lot of technology. So a lot of the stuff happens automatically. We also do fingerprint checks. So they go to any Jetline printer and put their fingerprint in, and they can then get the criminal record checked. So and so you want me to talk you through some commercial stories? Sure. So one of the cool partnerships that we've made, which is, we want to continue making more partnerships like this, because I think there's a lot of value to be unlocked for everyone if when we do this, is the one with Leroy Merlin. And this is the world's third largest hardware store and the biggest one in Europe. And they're now coming to South Africa to basically try and win the market. And they're opening up these huge stores every month or so. There's now around 4 of them. And anyway, so what happens there, which is really cool, is as a customer, you go and you pick a kitchen unit, right? You're like, I like this kitchen unit. And often the schlep is like, I don't know how to, I need to find someone to install this thing, right? So what happens at Leroy Merlin now, and this has been happening pretty much since they launched, which is actually the first time they've done this in the world, is they've got a price for the kitchen and then a price for installation. With like, you pay extra for installation. And that's on the kitchen unit. And then, so when you're paying at the till, you basically pay a bit extra, and then we have some service providers who we specially vetted to make sure they can install those particular kitchens to the level that they need to be, because we have all this infrastructure and all these service providers ready, right? And so, from a homeowner's perspective, that's super great. You get someone trusted at a great price while you're buying your kitchen. So that's that kind of convenience, quality, price is the kind of thing that we would love to, with our technology, provide in more situations. So yeah, that's a cool story.
Thanks, Arjun. And I mean, I could spend a lot of time speaking to you and getting those insights and those those key stories. But as we move along, looking at the current situation, in the world right now, I know definitely COVID-19 has impacted everyone, and greatly, might I say, it's had a significant impact on business, on personal life, and all of that stuff. We know the negative impacts of COVID-19, but what are the positives, or some of the positives that have come out, for Kendua through this period?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll tell you how what we observed when we saw COVID, what we did, and what has happened. So obviously, the one thing that we all know is social distancing, right? So people are scared to get people into their homes, especially the higher lockdown levels. Then we have the thing of, well, more things are breaking at home, and people are noticing more that's wrong with their home because they're in their homes all the time. So that there's even there's a higher need from that, and that speaks a bit to that. I mean, obviously there's some potential for upside there. And then the other thing is service providers are really struggling during this time because their markets are disrupted. As you said, a lot of them operate, not on the digital space, and so so we noticed all this, and we're like, okay, so how can we fix this situation? So we launched a couple things, and I think being a startup, and particularly a technology-enabled startup, that's kind of our thing. Is like we can see a thing and do a thing. Like code can be written very quickly, and products can be built. So basically, we built a DIY coach thing, which was really cool. So it was actually inspired by one of our service providers whose wife was really ill, didn't have any work, and started trying to do online coaching. So we have like all these focus groups with our guys. It's very important to keep close tabs with them, and this is the kind of nuggets that you sometimes get from it. And so we got inspired by this guy, and we were like, hey, let's launch the service of DIY coaching. for everyone else. Because there was even a stage in lockdown when hardware stores were open, but you couldn't get someone to come
Yes,
to your
yes,
home. And
yes, I remember that.
so people could DIY, but they didn't know how, right? And so we launched a service where, okay, you can have a WhatsApp video call with someone who you can get connected to very quickly via our website, and then you can pay him for his time, and you can say, hey, and people have done all kinds of, like changing, like fixing electrical stuff in their house, like unscrewing the lights and fiddling with the wires, stuff you'd be scared of, and people are doing that. So that was really awesome to see. And then we also have a whole bunch of DIY videos that we supplemented that with to react to that. And so that was cool while things were, under very stringent lockdown. And the cool thing is now that lockdown has eased a bit. I mean, although obviously, we are bearing the brunt of that as a country, but from an economic perspective, things have really picked up. And we're back to heights that we've actually never seen before. We've had some record weeks in the last couple of weeks. So
it's great to hear that. I mean, even at Property Point as well, across there's some great stories that businesses are flourishing even through a difficult time like this. And it's not everyone, but it's still here. It's still great to hear that the businesses that we deal with are responding quickly to to the call, and are being innovative, as I mentioned before. What I want to move on next is what does innovation mean to you? And coupled with that question, I'd also like to know, what advice would you give our audience in terms of being being innovative in your thinking? What advice would you give our audience?
So I guess the first point on what innovation is, I guess innovation means really understanding a problem. And it's often more, often when we think of innovation, we think of solution, right? We think of innovative solutions. But I think the biggest gap in many of our attempts to be innovative, both at me as an individual, us as a company, and I think anyone who's trying to do it, from speaking to my other, startup friends, is that often you don't really understand the problem, or the problem is not, the problem you're solving is not the real problem that exists. And that's, I think for me, was a huge learning, right? Is to spend more time listening and just letting people talk about the problem. It feels like you just want to get out there and build and move forward, but sometimes very often the most useful thing to do to be innovative is to really understand the shape of the problem. Because it's problems are fascinating, multifaceted things, and everyone has slightly different ones. I think that's an important part. And basically, the way I've approached it, and I guess I come from a bit of an engineering mindset, right? And I kind of generalize all innovation and any kind of problem in any space into a couple important things. So number one is understanding the problem, which is I just kind of underscored the importance of, and I think that's again one we very often neglect. And then the second thing that you do is you design something. You design some process, some environment, some software, some user experience that would solve the problem in a way that satisfies all the constraints of what the problem was. And then it's about executing it, right? So it's like being disciplined and focused and accountable to yourself and to everyone. And often we notice that things are not happening at the one end, like we're not getting the results that we want. And often the easiest thing to look at is execution. I just didn't work enough hours. I didn't, it's a guy I hired, he wasn't. But actually, you often find that those are the superficial symptoms of more fundamental underlying problems. And then I guess the other thing I should say on this kind of topic is that this framework is that it's in order for it to kind of work, you have to, and this is a bit of a startup cliche, but it's a cliche because it's so true, is that you have to keep your eye on the ball and every time you do something, you measure it, right? You measure like what are the,
because I've seen on the website, that you guys have a lot of metrics there. So what you're mentioning now is speaks to the fundamentals of Kindua, is being able to measure. I mean, at Property Point as well, we pay it's probably one of the cornerstones of looking at our impact and our development is,
Sure.
if
100%.
you can measure, you need to realize if you're increasing, if you're decreasing, if you're progressing, if you're going backwards. And so, I fully agree. I fully agree with that statement.
Yeah, for sure. No, yeah, tracking, and that's these are the things we kind of learned we learned the importance of more and more as we went on. So
So I think you cut off there for a
oh,
moment.
sorry,
I
can you hear
think
me now? Hi, can you hear me now? Is that better? Hello? Hello? Hi.
We can hear you, Arjun. I think Brad's connection is a bit.
Oh, okay.
He'll
No
come
worries.
back.
I can just go on then, and then when Brian rejoins, he rejoins. So yeah. So what I was saying was that these are some of the things that we learned as we went along. So everyone starts out from different places. Everyone has their own kind of shortcomings on a personal level, and often the thing about starting a company is that you see those shortcomings manifested in your face all the time, because your company basically grows out of whatever qualities, strengths, and weaknesses you have. And yeah, so everyone, when I'm talking about the kind of advice I have to give, a lot of it is from my own perspective, and everyone will have their own way at it. And I think that making sure that you're really deeply passionate, interested about the problem is the way of making sure that you care enough about your weaknesses and of yourself and the product to renovate yourself. But anyways, to stop being so meta, some of the things that I personally learned was, and we personally learned at Kindua, is to be much more focused. So I mean, one of the things that we what we basically try to do, right, is our mission is basically to shorten the distance between having a skill and making a living from it using data and technology. Now that's a very broad mission, and that's awesome because that is really the scope of our mission, right? So the interesting thing is, hi Brad. So, I was just talking to people. You're on mute, by the way. But I was just talking through some of the second part of your question, which was what are some of the lessons that I learned, or what on this journey. And I was just saying how one of the key things for me was focus. And so yeah, so because our mission is so broad, shorten the distance between having a skill and making a living from it, it's very easy to get lost in all the different kinds of ways we could shorten that distance. So I mean, for some context, some of the other things that we have and have always been doing from the beginning as well is also, providing a means to get insurance for these service providers, many of whom are much more uninsured than in more developed countries. Even the guys who our businesses are doing really well. It's not a thing. Access to finance, people are saving up for a bucky with cash every day, and then eventually buying it like that with cash. If it wasn't for the ability to raise capital, we as a business would never be where we are. And how many small businesses are we stifling the growth of if we don't bring those kind of things to them? And luckily our data that we've been collecting is starting to become useful in that space as well. And then there's access to hardware, there's access to workers, and apprentices, and that's another shortcoming of the match between training and industry, and there's that whole problem. So there's all these meta problems around our problem, and they're all very interesting problems, and problems that we definitely know we can make a difference in. And for a long time, it was our efforts were too diffuse, I think, across all of them. And so we got more laser focused, and we were like, let's nail this marketplace, because the marketplace is the core, and that's why service providers come to us. That's why customers love us, and that's really what pays the bills. So for now, and then that was one of our key learnings early on, and that's how we kind of grew ourselves to be the biggest in the country, is by just being obsessively focused about it. And often often when I thought of what innovation is, I would think it's crazy ideas that come in the middle of the night, and it's the lightning bolt. But often it's just really deliberate, writing down what you think the problem is over and over and over again, belligerently searching the same corners of the room until you find what you're looking for. And yeah, it's much more about that than I thought it would be. And so that was a key learning early on. And now the cool thing is, because we started to get momentum and now we can have a bigger team, we can start to also pay more attention to some of the problems that I mentioned, which are also very interesting and useful, I think, as a society, if we can solve. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Thanks, Mr. Khoosal. Appreciate those words and also those insights. I definitely think there's some key takeouts from the session for audience and the viewers on YouTube as well. I think we definitely need to schedule another catch-up session so that we can extract more of the insights and the experiences that you had. But in saying that, what next for Kandua, and where do you see yourselves in the next 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah, sure. So we always try to find better ways of ultimately connecting service providers to customers. So we continue to invest in different revenue models about how that would work, that makes everyone happy, because it's a very tricky balancing act to balance the interests of the customer, the service provider, our own interests, and also often our partners. And so we always experimenting with different methods of constructing those interactions. And we have some interesting plans for the kind of ways we want to facilitate that going forward. And then another thing you will notice I mentioned partners, is we really want to connect with people who can amplify our reach. A lot of people have this problem in their businesses or industries. And it's not their problem, but it's unfortunately a problem to them. For example, you guys, and I know we have discussions about how we can go about solving some of those problems. So we'd love to partner with, people who maybe their customers need access to some kind of service and they're not a service company, maybe they're a goods company. Or maybe they are a services company for X, Y, and Z, but their customers are asking for one of the other, 100 services or so that we have. And so, yeah, those are the kind of opportunities I think we notice we can have a huge impact in. And because we build technology ourselves, we can always find a way of bending it and MacGyvering it into whatever context it's needed. So that's, I think, a huge part of our plans going forward. So very, very interested in those kind of opportunities. And another thing is we want to, all the things that I mentioned, the side problems, we want to throw some weight behind them too, and really make it so that as a service provider, if you're good at what you do, like the guy who was building at my parents' place, if you're really good at what you do, nothing stands in your way and you flourish. Everything is taken care of for you.
I like that. Yeah.
Basically what we kind of want, what we see ourselves as, is like the access. So this whole industry is a bit of a mess, right? No one really knows what's going on in it. A lot of the businesses aren't properly registered. It's very hard to access who's good, who's not. Many of the trades don't have any certifying bodies. And so what we want to do is basically using technology, bundle it up in a really easily accessible way to the outside world. And so providing that access is something that we want to do in more ways, at bigger scales, and with more velocity going forward. So yeah, that's basically our plan.
And as we close off the session, any closing thoughts for the audience, or any key lessons or advice you'd like to relate to the guys listening in?
Let me see. I guess one of the things that I've loved about one of the things that I've really recognized, and it's just, maybe this is just a thing I feel like I haven't said yet, is the importance of surrounding yourself with people who enable you. Find people who give you energy. If you're trying to start a company like this, it's an incredible weight. Most of the time, too incredible for one person to bear by themselves. And you need people around you who can share that weight, make you smile, and make you excited, push you to be better. And the importance of that, both in a co-founder or co-founders and in a team, can never be underestimated. So that's I guess a closing remark.
Mr. Khoosal, I really like to thank you and appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us and give us those key insights and those key lessons, and also just sharing your experience with us. Once again, thank you, and we appreciate your time, and we hope to chat again soon.
Yeah, for sure, Brad. Thank you very much for having me. It was a great conversation, and may it be the first of many. Cheers.
Thanks, Mr. Khoosal. Take care, man.
Cool. Cheers, eh? Bye.
Okay, cool. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and listening and being a part of the In Conversation session this afternoon. As we close as well, I would like to just inform you about the session that we're going to be hosting tomorrow. My colleague Kujo Langa will be talking to an entrepreneur as well, whose name is Carl Lu. He's the founder and CEO of Service Hero. So that's going to be quite an interesting chat, and I'd like you to register and sign up. And you can find the details to that on www.ettp.co.za, or you can send us an email on info@ettp.co.za. Alternatively, you can also catch us on YouTube at our YouTube page at Entrepreneurship to the Point. Please subscribe, so that you can be the first to know, and turn on your notifications as well, so that you can be the first to know when we're going to be putting out more content, and you can be notified when we are having our live streams. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's me, Bradley Cody, and we'll look forward to chatting to you again soon. Have a great afternoon, and see you and speak to you soon. Cheers.